Welcome to the Breakthrough Success Podcast, helping you achieve that breakthrough you've always been looking for in your business. And now your host, Mark Guberti. Hello and welcome. I am your host, Mark Guberti, and this is the podcast for marketers and small business owners who are looking for the breakthrough for their businesses. I am very excited about this show. We are going to discuss how to persevere through any challenge with our guest, Lance Allred. Lance became the first deaf player in NBA history, and since retiring from the NBA, he is now a best-selling author and KeyNote motivational speaker with a TEDx talk under his belt. Lance is the leader of Perseverance, and now it is my pleasure to welcome him to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, man. That's like that intro got me pumped up. I've never heard someone sum me up so concisely as you did. Well done.
Thank you. I was really amazed by your story because there's an idea that like some people, they like to complain about their limitations and they like to say, oh, I had this big goal, but the reason I didn't get it done was because of all these different limitations. And in your case, many people would have understood if you didn't reach your full potential in life because you were deaf and all these things that seem to be stacked against you. And yet you played in the NBA and are now a highly sought KeyNote motivational speaker. What motivated you to persevere through being deaf?
Oh, boy. What motivated me? Mark, there were a lot of things, I'll tell you. That's okay. It's okay to have several factors of motivation. One, you have your altruistic factor, which is the love of something that you do. Two, fear motivates people quite a bit too. Fear and love motivate people that you're afraid that if you don't do this, you're going to be a failure or people will laugh at you. And there's a third, which is spite. When people say you can't do something and you want to prove them wrong. So I can say all three of those have been used throughout my course. So I grew up in a strange background. I was born and raised in a polygamous commune, and that's why I'm legally deaf. I was born in my grandmother's bedroom when they didn't have the medical amenities to take care of something called the RH factor. But that's why I'm deaf. And I was in speech therapy till I was 16, learning to talk this way. And throughout all my life, I've had people putting limitations on me, and I simply chose not to listen. I can't hear very well anyway. And if I had been worried about if people were right or wrong, I never would have achieved the things I needed to do. At the end of the day, I always trusted myself. I knew my intuition was right. And most people don't know how to listen to themselves. We're so distracted with social media, phones, online entertainment that we don't know how to sit and listen to ourselves. And that's what the law of attraction is. People focus on the law of attraction being, oh, you want something, you wish for a car, and the car will appear if you want it bad enough, and the universe will conspire with you to make it happen. No, the law of attraction is you set an intention in your head, this is what you want to do, and then the intention will come to you. The intuition will come that tells you this is what you need to do to get what you want. And I said, when I started playing basketball at the age of 14, after I escaped polygamy, I didn't have any friends. And I wanted to be good at something. I wanted to find a new identity. But also, it had been impressed upon me as a young kid that, God had made me deaf as a form of punishment. So I have this weird, distorted story in my head that I had to earn love. And so the three things are coming into play. One, basketball was something new for me. I grew from 5'10" to 6'4". I was big. I was very uncoordinated and clumsy. I didn't have the inner-ear imbalance. But it was something that was new for me, that was allowing me to have a new identity, a new outlet. But two, the fear that I wasn't worthy of love. That was a great catalyst for why I kept playing basketball. And three, then when I was so clumsy and uncoordinated, I couldn't play basketball with my hearing aids in. I had to learn to be very visual and play like a game of chess. And people were saying, no, he's too deaf to play basketball. But despite me wanting to prove people wrong. And throughout all my life, I've heard every excuse in the book, Mark. People often say to me, yeah, if I had been 7 foot, I would have played in the NBA. I'm like, really though? You sure about that? Pretty much when people say that to me, it lets me know they will never know the price that I paid to get to the level that I achieved. And two, if they're willing to use that excuse, then they will use other excuses for other things that didn't come true in their life. And so excuses are, they're an addiction. People will use them to give themselves an out. Whereas for me, the first time I picked up a basketball at the age of 14, when I said, this is what I'm going to do with my life, I was never going to use my hearing as an excuse. I was never going to prove people right with my excuses. In that if a coach forgot to use a hand signal or he refused to use a hand signal, sometimes they play overseas with very stubborn coaches to call a play. They think they're brilliant and they don't want the defense to know their play. And that's challenging. So I had to always learn to read my teammates' lips. And so if the coach would call a play and I couldn't see it, I'd run the wrong play, he'd call a timeout, he'd freak out and say, Lance, what are you doing? And I'm like, I could very easily say, Coach, I need you to use a hand signal. But I never did that. I always just said, Coach, you're right. I forgot to play. I was never going to use that hearing loss as an excuse and prove people right. And because I take full accountability of my setbacks, I can then take full ownership for my success as well.
So when you had all these different people coming up to you and saying you can't do this because of this, like basically saying like you're deaf and that's why you're like unable to do certain things, you say that that was a part of like the outside environment, but you never really listened to those types of people. And people listening to this, they're not deaf in the sense, but like they're facing a similar type of battle in the sense where there is someone who is like imposing a limitation on them. And just give us some advice on like how did you block out these people when they attempted to set limitations on you?
It's not easy. Remember that. And remember that you're human. And it's okay to feel discouragement. It's okay to wonder if this is the right path. But when you do that and you know this is important to you, it makes your success that much sweeter. And so you have to realize, too, that people inflict pain because they're in pain. And so those that are trying to crush you and tell you what you can and can't do, they already themselves have so much dialogue going on inside their head that when people inflict pain, it's just a projection. And that they're going to tell you what you can and can't do because if you go off and you be successful, it's going to make them look even more insecure and inferior. That they're going to say, you know what, I didn't have the courage to chase my dreams. I don't want to have to work that hard for my dreams to come true. I don't want to pay this price. I should be the entitled the American dream and everything should go my way because I'm born. Everyone's entitled to the trophy, right? No, life doesn't work that way. But everyone thinks they're entitled to the trophy. And so when they see someone who's willing to work harder than they are, it makes him feel uncomfortable and realize, makes him say, you know what? If he's going to work harder than me, he might get all of his dreams. He might be happy. So therefore, I don't want to see that. I don't want to be accountable for my own happiness and my own success. So I'm going to try to quash him, get him to stay in his place, be a good boy, so that I don't have to feel like I'm missing out on anything. And most people, again, they want the American dream, but they're not willing to pay the price for it, Mark. That they think they're entitled to something. And entitlement's a vicious disease. I was never entitled to anything. I never allowed myself to believe I was entitled to anything, except for self-love. That's something I had to learn. Love. Love is either unconditional or it's not love at all. And those that would say otherwise do not need to be in your life. They're not good for you. And so always just remember, keep your intention and keep the intuition. And the law of attraction is if you set yourself on this frequency, you will begin attracting people of that same frequency. And I think you might, you look like a sharp kid, and this is something you're passionate about. That you're I don't like to say the income. People use the noun the income, but I believe your frequency is the average frequency of the 5 people who are closest to you. So some people say your salary is the average salary of the 5 people closest to you. I say the frequency. So if you keep saying this is what I want to do, the people who are in your life that choose not to go on that journey with you, they will phase out either consciously or subconsciously. And if you hold true to your frequency and your intention, eventually you will begin surrounding yourself with like-minded people who want to resonate on that same frequency as you.
Within your MBA journey, you had to face several challenges, and I'm wondering, what was the biggest hurdle you had to overcome as the NBA's first deaf player? I mean, hearing all these stories, like I listened to your TEDx, and I heard some really inspirational stuff there, and also hearing these like different things where like the hand signal, something that I wouldn't think about as much. So, what was that biggest hurdle, and how did you overcome it?
I think you heard me say in my TEDx talk, the greatest challenge of disability is not the actual disability itself, but is rather the perceived limitations that those around you and eventually yourself begin to believe are true. That's the greatest hurdle. Self-doubt, wondering if you're good enough, and the belief that I had to do something almost otherworldly and then I'd be worthy of love. The fact that I couldn't love myself as I was, that I had to do something legendary and then I'd be worthy of love from God and from everybody else. That dialogue that I had with myself, that I had to be better, I had to do something even better than who I already was. That was the greatest hurdle for sure, because that self doubt and that self narrative would also sabotage me sometimes in basketball. That if I missed like 3 shots in a row, I'm like, oh no, I suck. And then I would just get inside my head and then I would just start doubting myself. So self doubt for sure was always the greatest hurdle. Because here's the thing about being an underdog, Mark, physically. In the fourth quarter of a loud arena, everyone's deaf. And so in the land of temporary deafness, a permanently deaf man is king. That's the thing about being an underdog. If you stick around long enough, you're not always the underdog. So all you have to do is keep showing up every day. Show up, show up. That's the secret. There's no magic wand. There's no cheat sheet. Is that you just choose every morning to get out of bed and keep showing up. It's your choice. Simple as that. The essence of leadership is perseverance. The essence of perseverance is grit. And the essence of grit is choice. Do you choose to get back up every time you get knocked down? Do you choose to get back up out of bed every morning when you're tired and you're not sure if this is the right thing and you have doubt, self-doubt and doubt from others around you? That is the greatest challenge. The choice for me to play despite my disabilities, it wasn't really even a choice anymore because, again, I stuck around long enough that there were times where I had the advantage. And because I had to be such a visual player and always be so mentally approaching like a game of chess, I learned to be very conscientious and aware of where everyone was on the court. And I learned to very quickly remember plays and be aware of what was happening. And so it wasn't always a disadvantage physically. The greatest challenge, again, was the self doubt and the belief that I just wasn't a good enough person. That was the greatest challenge for me.
So when people ask you how you made the NBA, you'll ask them a question and you'll say, how willing are you to fail? And it seems like ambitious people are willing to fail, and this willingness to fail results in massive success later on. But there are other people who are like, I don't want to fail, I want to be perfect. So like, how do you develop a willingness to fail? And what has that given?
Oh boy. Good question. Remember this. Perfection is not pretty. It's an oxymoron, isn't it? But it's true. It's true.
Yeah. I mean, you want to think perfection. It's like the perfect score on the test.
To get there. And it's the journey. It's the striving to do it. And I have a high threshold for discomfort. That's one of the principles of perseverance, in that I can endure a lot of physical discomfort, pain, and physical injuries, and starvation, playing on ramen noodles because I wasn't getting paid, or making very minimal money before I was called to the NBA. But my even greater discomfort is that I was never allowed the luxury of comfort zones. Because I was born in rural Montana, there were no amenities to learn sign language. There was no community. I had to learn to wear the hearing aids and always be pushed outside my comfort zone every day, talking like a duck, person like us, that would be made fun of by everybody else. And bullying and all that stuff, that I was always pushed out of my comfort zone every day. And so I've never had the luxury of comfort zones. And so here's the thing about failure. I don't understand why everyone's so afraid of this thing. Failure means that you are simply stepping outside your comfort zone, that you're trying something new. Without resistance, without failure, there is no growth. The laws of physics state for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. And you have to have resistance to grow. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Resistance makes you stronger. So, if I were to go play basketball, but I had never done any weight training or conditioning or wind sprints in the preseason and just showed up to play a basketball game, I would be wiped off the floor. I have to have that resistance to build my endurance and perseverance. And so you can't have that without failure. Failure is part of life, is part of growth. Failure means you're stepping outside your comfort zone. Whereas to me, the true essence of failure, as people that stay inside their comfort zone, that play it safe, that never want to fail. That's called being mediocre. And mediocre is the true essence of failure. And so that's what I tell everyone, go fail as much as you can. Failure means that you're growing. And because I've failed so many times, it's ridiculous. It would blow people's minds how many times I've failed at things. But because I choose to get back up every time, that's why I have been able to be as successful as I have been.
You credit your will and choice to becoming the first deaf player in NBA history. And we've already discussed your willingness to fail, but how did you create the choice that you took so seriously to the point where it shapes your actions? Because some people would be like, oh, I choose to do this, but then like a week later, they're not really taking it as seriously. So how did it's like you said I choose to become an NBA player, but like it was less choice and more like dogma, belief, and like something. How did you like make that happen?
It's hard. That's a hard thing to do because, again, we've been so conditioned to speak and I have to, I want to. And I still catch myself some days. And that's the thing, is you have to realize you're human. We can't all be the Dalai Lama and just enlightened all the time. But as long as you're aware and you catch yourself, that's the trick. If you're aware of it, that you aware that you're playing this game of life, you're in it, but you're not of it. That you understand you have to do these things, but you don't have to be caught up in the madness of how everyone's attaching their self worth to an outcome, which is a losing game because there's so many things beyond our control. And so I know I choose to be in control of what I can control. And most importantly, that's my thought patterns. Thought patterns are what trigger emotions and further thoughts. It's the thought patterns underneath that I choose to be aware of, saying, no, I'm thinking like a polygamous kid here who's immediately assuming guilt, thinking I did something wrong. No, I'm choosing to no longer think that way. I choose to think like an adult. I choose to think like a leader who's a leader of their own life. That's how that's how I have to catch myself. I choose, I choose. And but it makes people uncomfortable. When you say, I'll choose the chicken tonight, thank you. They're like, huh? Why is he talking like that? Because you're supposed to say, I want the chicken, or I would like the chicken, or I'll have the chicken. I choose the chicken tonight. Like, and it's gonna make people uncomfortable because one, what you're doing, at least on a subconscious level, you're stretching out really far and setting your boundaries this way. And everyone's like, no, you're supposed to stay inside your physical space. Those are your boundaries. And so it takes a lot of practice. But that's the thing, Mark. Just as I practice my daily basketball drills every day, the repetition, the habit becomes you, the repetition. It's the same thing as a speaker. It's the same thing as my internal dialogue. It's the repetition. I'm not always going to score 30 points a night. Some nights I'll lay an egg, and that's okay. But the next night you get back up because you choose to, and you keep going at it. Same thing. Some days I'm going to have an awesome day where I'm a leader of my own life. Some days I'm like, yeah, I kind of laid an egg today, but that's okay. I choose to get back up the next morning and keep going at it. You have to set yourself to a high expectation, but also give yourself compassion, knowing that you're human and that's okay. It's okay to fail. What's not okay is to stay down. That's never okay. You choose to get back up every time because you choose to. Why? Because it's your choice. Simple as that.
So after your success in the NBA and you've had a lot of time on courts and all these different stadiums, you decide to take center stage in a different way as a keynote motivational speaker. Why did you choose to go down that route?
Uh, some of it's genetic, some of it's DNA, in that my grandfather was the religious leader of this colony before he was assassinated. My dad was before we broke away. But then my father became a school teacher, and I would go and watch him teach history as a kid. And just the way he had the command of the English language. But then through weird experiences, when I was legally deaf but playing basketball at the University of Utah, then Weber State, schools wanted me to come talk to their kids about, playing with disabilities. And then when I was in the D League and then the Cavaliers, I mean, I was the guy that they would send to talk to the kids at schools, and just little by little, these opportunities kept coming my way. I was the deaf guy that had to be the media guy, right? I was a deaf guy that had to be the communicator. So there's a great ironies about life. But because I had to work so hard to communicate and sound this way, it's one of the things I'm most grateful for. That people take for granted this thing of communication. They really do. And I do not. And so therefore I'm grateful to do it. And then when my book, A Long Shot, in 2009, which was published by HarperCollins, when that came out, I went on a book tour, and I just realized, you know what, I really enjoy this. And then as I was nearing the end of my career, I'm like, I really want to try this. I want to give this a shot because there's a lot of public speakers out there who make stupid money, but one, some of them aren't really good, but they're really good at marketing. Two, some of them don't even have a story, but they're just good at regurgitating Tony Robbins or Zig Ziglar and packaging it up in a new way that makes it their own. But they don't have any original content, but they're making stupid money. We call them charlatans. And so, growing up where I grew up, I know what a charlatan looks like. And so, I kind of have this chip on my shoulder to go to kind of just throw these people around a bit. And so, I figured, I reasoned that as a deaf polygamous kid who made the NBA, I sort of cornered the market. There's not any other deaf polygamous kids who played in the NBA, right? So there's only one me. So I'm like, that's pretty unique. I don't think there'll ever be another me in this world. So yeah, that sets me apart. And so if I take my same principles of perseverance and habits and work ethic and from basketball and flip it into this new career, if I stay true to those principles, I know I have a good shot at making this happen. And it was nearly 2 years, about 18 months of hard work. Setbacks, going through a divorce, being a single dad, transitioning careers. Um, it was painful. It was maybe even more difficult than making the NBA. But because I took these same principles and applied them, it was more difficult, not in the physical sense, but in the mental sense of, again, me really getting down to my old subconscious thought patterns. What was my polygamy and ripping it out and learning how to be a great communicator, an authentic communicator. That was very, very difficult. Um, Physical pain, physical intimacy, is much easier than mental pain and mental and emotional intimacy. And so that's how I mean making the MBA was maybe even easier than what this last challenge was in that context, if I'm making sense. And so that's kind of how I transitioned into it. And it's a wonderful job. It's a wonderful career. I don't miss basketball because I have those same pregame butterflies before I go on the stage. I'm still entertaining people, but now I'm connecting with them on a deeper level. I'm helping them instead of just distracting them as a basketball player. And so it's a very fulfilling job.
I definitely agree that it is a fulfilling job, but I want to talk about one point you've been sprinkling in this episode, that you were raised in a family of polygamy. And in your TEDx talk, you discuss your escape from that lifestyle and going on to the physical mental. Even though you physically escaped as a 13-year-old, it was more difficult for you to empty out all that mental baggage from living in that culture in Montana. So how did you eventually get rid of that baggage and eliminate the thought patterns that were no longer serving you?
It was, here's the funny thing about my TED Talk, Mark. When I first thought I was giving it, I thought I was going to be giving a male perspective on polygamy, right? But when the epiphany came of how am I going to make this applicable to everybody, when I found the rhetorical question, what is your polygamy? I realized, wait, I have to walk this talk. I can't just get up there and spoon feed people some garbage. I actually have to show that I've walked it. And at the same time, I was going through a divorce. That's why I retired from basketball to be with my son, who's 3 now. But I was going through a divorce, and I didn't know how to grieve. I came from a world of polygamy where your emotions are really repressed. You're always happy and peaceful. You're never upset or angry because those are the devil, right? All that superstitious kind of thinking. So it was just repressed emotional intelligence. And so I didn't know how to grieve. I didn't know how to have an argument, a healthy argument. I only knew how to just stonewall, don't show any emotions. And so I had to challenge myself. If I want to do this motivational speaking thing and be one of the greatest communicators in the world, I have to walk this talk. And so the power of the TED Talk, the TEDx Salt Lake City, What is Your Polygamy, was me choosing to finally go through the grieving cycle and me coming out at the end of it. That's where the power was. All the intellectual concepts and food for thought was fun, but the real power in the end was me coming out of that grieving cycle and realizing that I'm human and finding beauty in that pain, which is grief, which makes us human. And that resistance has made me far stronger than any basketball game or training. The emotional growth that I had to go through, the loss of a marriage, which is just as painful as a death, um, that has made me far more stronger and more able to be vulnerable. And I find strength in that vulnerability. And so my polygamy is I didn't know how to grieve, how to feel, how to allow myself to feel without judging myself. It's okay to feel things. We're not human because we think, we're human because we feel. And I had to allow myself to have feelings without judging them or judging me, breathe through them and allow them to pass. There are days where memories of my marriage will come over me like a cloud, and that's okay. You just learn to breathe, hold your breath, breathe it out, and let it pass. You're always going to have these things. It's human. And that was the learning curve of the TEDx talk. What is your polygamy? That I had to learn to overcome my polygamy, which was choosing to be a leader of my own life, choosing to own my thought patterns, choosing to discard my inherited thought patterns from my polygamous community, from my grandfather, from my father, that were passed down to me, which were thought patterns of victimhood and martyrdom, that the world is conspiring against me, that I have to earn God's love. These are all old thought patterns that really are not mine, but I inherited them. And it's me choosing to break away from those shackles of polygamy, those thought patterns that no longer serve me, choosing to be aware that they're simply just thought patterns. And the thought patterns are what create our perspective, and our perspective is what creates our reality. It was me choosing to be aware of it. If you can simply get to the point where you're aware of your thought patterns, that is a huge step. If you can simply do that, you will be so far ahead of the game. It's not even funny.
So I find it really interesting that your father and grandfather were both, they believed so strongly in polygamy that they were willing to die for their faith, and they showed it through action. And it seems like in most experiences, the parents' actions forge the children's paths. Like, for instance, your teammate LeBron James, his son, I've seen some of those basketball videos of his son playing. He's going to be the next superstar in basketball when he comes up. But what made you choose a different path and go away from polygamy and choose your own lifestyle?
Well, luckily, my father, his second wife had left when I was a child, so we were a monogamous family. And so my father had discovered that several of our other leaders have been sexually abusing their kids. So that's actually why we went into hiding. We broke away. So we as a family physically broke away. And I was 13 at the time. And again, that was the easy part. But my choice of choosing more, again, Mark, some of that's intuition. But because I have always kept pushing beyond my comfort zone, and also because here's the weird juxtaposition that mentally I had been conditioned to stay inside a comfort zone, but physically, because of my hearing loss, I was not allowed to be in a comfort zone. So I was in this weird twilight zone or Bermuda Triangle or whatever, that life and my size and my 6'11" structure kept forcing me to play basketball. And it kept making me travel, and it kept making me meet all these other people from various cultures all around the world. That, and Mark Twain said it best, travel kills all prejudice and biases. And if I had one wish, I would make everyone travel the world for a year. I'm not talking about luxury resort hopping. I'm talking about living in the real communities and culture. Um, those travels and me never allowing myself to have a physical comfort zone were clashing with my mental boundaries. And that's why I nearly committed suicide after my MBA experience, because reality was not looking like I expected it to look like. And I've struggled with suicidal depression as part of my genetic makeup as well, serotonin imbalance, and having to learn how to deal with all that. Um, but because there was so much conflict with my mental boundaries versus my physical boundaries, I either had to get to a point where I was going to kill myself or I had to shift. And I had to go through this very painful process, which is emotional health. And the thing about emotional health is so abstract. You can't really measure it like you can physical progress. It's what is emotional health? To me, emotional health is, are you accountable and are you a leader of your own life? Are you accountable not just for your actions, but your thoughts and your thought patterns and the emotions they trigger? And me having to go through the emotional journey of ripping away all this scar tissue and realizing these stories and these thought patterns I've been functioning on are not mine. They've never been mine. And to get that out of your system is like detoxing. When an alcoholic or drug addict has to detox, it's very painful. To get those thought patterns out of your emotional energy field is a very, very painful process. And most people will choose not to do it. And most people are not even awake or aware enough to know that they have a choice to do it, or is that something they might want to consider doing? I don't want to say they should do because implying there's a right and a wrong. Um, but those who are the more reflective, the more intuitive, will come to that bridge. And some will choose not to cross it and they'll go back and put their head in the sand. But for those who choose clarity, and clarity is simply all this awareness of knowing that these thought patterns are not mine. I see the game, I see the matrix as it is. I can plug in when I need to and play the game of life. I can detach when I need to and I need to recharge. And I realized all this noise is just white noise. It's all sound and fury. And that is clarity, knowing that it has nothing to do with you. Everyone's projection onto you has nothing to do with you. And so when you go through enough pain and enough resistance, you develop the thick skin and again the clarity to not let these things hurt you. And so all of those travels and experiences that basketball put me through definitely put me on a different path from my father and his father before him.
In your TEDx, you made the fascinating statement that most people, quote, choose a familiar hell over a familiar heaven because most people believe they're safe in the boundaries. But you know that's not the case. How do you overcome this feeling of perceived safeness and go beyond boundaries that others have implanted on your life?
Oh boy. It's the stubbornness and also again the fact that I wasn't given the luxury of comfort zones, but realizing that if everyone's playing in the same basketball court, there's not enough space for me to play my basketball game. So I have to make my basketball court just a little bit bigger so I have room to play. And so that's where you realize that's where the magic is. The magic is outside of the horse pen, outside of the original basketball court. That's where the fun is, because everyone else is hanging out in the pen. If you get out, jump over the pen, that's where you get to go see more things and experiencing things. Sure, you don't know what the boundaries are. That's kind of scary. Because once you break out of those initial boundaries, you're not really sure what the next boundaries are. And humans, we like to know what the rules are because it makes us feel safe, even if we're unhappy. And so people will adhere to strict religious dogma because they're afraid of what's going to happen to their eternal soul, because they're afraid of what's going to happen after they die. And so they'll endure a lot of guilt and shame and abuse from religious leaders just so that they can feel safe of knowing that these are the boundaries, these are the rules, that when I die, I'm going to be okay. That's the human condition. And once you step outside of that black and white thinking that we have all the answers, and you realize the more you learn in life, the more you learn how little you know. Einstein said it best that as his circle of knowledge grew, so too did the circumference of darkness surrounding it. So the more you learn in life, the more you grow, the more you learn you don't know anything. And that's when you fall into the gray areas. And that's actually very, very liberating when you get there because you realize I'm really not that important. I'm not that special. I'm not beholden to all these rules because I'm not that important anymore. I want to go do what I want to do. I want to live the life I choose. So that's the thing is, it's always the first step that's the scariest. But as a kid, here's what I always did. It's always been in my nature. When my uncle wanted me to jump off a bridge into a river, if I stood there and I just watched the water from above, I would paralyze myself and I'd be afraid to go. But what I learned to do instead, I wouldn't even look and check the height anymore. And I still don't check the height anymore. If I just know that someone jumped ahead of me, I'll just get in the back, I'll do a run, dead sprint, and I'll just run and I'll take off. And that I'm not going to allow my mind to play tricks on me into the fear of the unknown. I'm going to choose to have faith and trust in knowing that this is my path, this is my life, and I'm here to grow, I'm here to fail, I'm here to grow some more and learn all the things that I do not know and learn that I am human. That's what makes me human. And I am a child of this earth, and that's enough for me. And it's very liberating once you finally take that first step and you realize that just how insignificant yet how free you truly are.
You shared with us a lot of great lessons throughout this episode, but as you think about your entire life as escaping polygamy, becoming an NBA player, and now being a KeyNote motivational speaker, what is the best lesson that you have learned throughout that journey?
mm, is that love is either unconditional or it's not love at all. And I traveled the world for 10 years playing professional basketball on this alchemist journey, only to realize what I was looking for was with me all along. That I was enough, as I was, and I was loved. And I had to learn to be a leader in my own life and heal my past traumas. We all have PTSD. It's an event that causes us to have a fear-based reaction to any current or future event. My PTSD was a story from a Sunday school teacher that I had to earn love, basically. And that story perpetuated my reality. And I had to learn, you know what? My future wife or soulmate, all that mythical stuff is so childish. They weren't there. How could they possibly know what happened? Only I do. And so if an electron can be in two places at one time, why then can't I right now go into that memory of that 5-year-old boy? Imagine the look on 5-year-old me's face when he sees 6'11" man walk through the door, sit down next to him and say, "You're going to do great things, amazing things, and you are loved." That's all he ever wanted to hear, Mark. He didn't need that 5-year-old didn't need some MBA contract. He just wanted to know that he was good, that he was loved. And that was my job all along. That's where that hole in my heart came from, me dragging 5-year-old behind me, thinking he was a loser, I had to cut him off. That's where the hole in everyone's heart comes from, a trauma that they think someone else has to be responsible for filling. Because we're not taught to be leaders of our own lives. We're taught to be codependent, that we need a church or a soulmate or a car or a job or that next toy to make you happy. Those are all illusions. The truth is, you are the leader of your own life if you choose to be, and you are enough as you are.
One of the questions I like to ask my guests as we approach the end of podcast episodes is I like to ask them for one awesome inspirational quote they can think of so that listeners are left with a lot of inspiration. I mean, this whole episode has been very inspirational. But how about we add the cherry on top of the big chocolate ice cream?
People ask me oftentimes, because I gave you so many of my own little nuggets and quotes, I don't need to quote myself for this last one. But my favorite quote is from a Dylan Thomas poem, "Do not go gentle into that good night." It's a wonderful poem. It's a beautiful poem. And I always had it in my locker, always. And the last stanza says, "And you, my father, there on your sad height, curse bless me now with your fierce tears, I pray. Do not go gentle into that good night. Rage, rage against the dying of the light." So do not go gentle into that good night. Rage, rage against the dying of the light was always my quote. And it still inspires me to this day. Every day when I get up, so I will rage against the dying of the light. And I'm gonna live life my way because I choose to. And if I go down, I'm gonna go down swinging. And that's a life well lived.
Lance, this has been such an awesome interview. Before we go for this episode, I just want all of my listeners to know where they can find Lance on the web.
My website and my social media handle are Lance Allred 41, LanceAllred 41, the number 41, LanceAllred41.com, or on Instagram. I got some stuff on Twitter, but I'm pretty focused on Instagram. I like the creativity of Instagram. That's where you can track me down. Please keep up with me. I'm working on some cool things that I can keep. I can't really announce yet. Fun stuff's happening, but I haven't signed these contracts yet. But keep track of me, and there's some fun stuff coming up.
Lance, it has been so awesome to have you on Breakthrough Success. Thank you for stopping by.
Thanks for having me, Mark.
I thoroughly enjoyed that interview. Lance has such an inspirational story that makes you view life in an entirely new way. You can accomplish anything, regardless of what you may think is holding you back. Lance's TEDx is a much watch that really captures his story and will leave you charged. I really believe it's one of those TEDx's that you could actually watch multiple times and still feel charged. So his TEDx, What is Your Polygamy?, has been viewed over 2 million times. I enjoyed learning about his story while watching that talk on my computer and getting to learn more about him through this interview. If you forgot to take notes, then don't worry. We've got you covered with the show notes. Visit markgilberti.com/E35 for those. You can ask your questions over there, which I'll be more than happy to answer. To never miss an episode, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast on whatever player you are using. If you are a regular listener and haven't done so already, I would greatly appreciate it if you could give this podcast a review or a rating. 2 ways you could do this are through markgilberti.com/iTunes or markgilberti.com/Stitcher. That ends this episode. Don't forget, dream big, achieve greatness, and unlock your potential today. How does over 100 retweets per day sound to you? My free ebook, 27 Ways to Get More Retweets on Twitter, has you covered. I use the methods within this ebook to get over 10,000 retweets every single quarter. To learn more and get access to this free resource, visit markgilberti.com/retweet. This podcast is a production done by Mark Gilberti. For more insights, head on over to markgilberti.com.